Hi, everyone. It's Kathy Meyer here with DivorcedMoms.com, and it's time to talk about divorce. Today, I have joining me Stephanie Williams. Stephanie is a certified law specialist practicing exclusively in the area of family law. She founded her Sacramento, California family law firm in 2002 and focuses primarily on divorce, child custody matters, child support, spousal support, domestic violence issues, prenuptial agreements, along with other family law matters. In addition to traditional courtroom litigation, she also offers mediated divorce and collaborative divorce services. If you want to know more about Stephanie, you can find her information at divorceoptions.net. Hi, Stephanie. Welcome.
Thank you.
Tonight is an important discussion. We hear a lot from our readers, our moms, about a lot of fear around the visitation and custody issues that are coming up due to COVID-19.
Yes.
A lot of moms are concerned that their children aren't as safe with their ex-husbands as they are with them.
Yeah.
And that's a natural inclination when it comes to moms. They think nobody can take care of their children as well as they can.
Of course.
But there are real cases where the child is not safe. If the father isn't following guidelines, if the father's having parties, if the father's taking the child to visit friends, then mothers have a reason to be concerned.
Yeah.
And I wanted those mothers to know that we hear them, we acknowledge them and their concern. And I thought I would ask you a few questions that we got from some of our moms tonight and get your feedback for them.
Great.
Okay, I'm going to read these questions because I don't have the brain capacity to memorize them. So mom number one asks, can I refuse to allow the other parent access if he is not taking precautions following CDC guidelines during this crisis?
Well, that's a tough situation, Kathy. And I think a lot of moms are probably share that concern, right? I mean, we all feel like nobody is going to be as careful with our children as we can be. That said, it's at least in California, our courts have taken a position that you really are supposed to follow the custody schedule, even though the shelter-in-place orders have been issued by our governor, and our president is reiterating that idea, that we should be staying at home. And I know that's really hard for a lot of parents, a lot of moms. So my suggestion would be that unless you have a very, very unsafe situation where you have documentation that the other parent is not abiding by, say, the CDC guidelines, or is having parties, is having other children into the house or other people into the house, you need to try to work with that other parent, and you need to try to stay with your court orders or your previous schedule that you were working under if you don't have court orders.
Well, let me ask you this question. With most of the family courts or most of the courts being closed, what is the likelihood of a parent being able to get an ex parte motion?
Well, that's a great question. Right now, what I'm hearing out of our courts is that ex partes are, they are still coming in every day. So the courts, even though they're closed to regular business, they're still hearing ex parte custody motions.
Well,
so if you have, Yeah, so if you have a very dangerous situation that you're facing, you can still go to court and ask for ex parte relief. The judges and that I have talked to during this crisis are taking, I would say, a very strict line on what constitutes an emergency under these circumstances, because let's face it, we're in uncharted territory.
Yes.
And right now everything is sort of an emergency, right? I mean, that we're not going to work, that we're not going to church, we're not visiting our relatives and friends. That's all because we're under a sort of an emergency situation. And so I think the courts are taking, yes, a very strict approach to whether there are good grounds for an ex parte order to be issued. So I would say, in even in normal times before COVID, um, we would sometimes say the standard is blood on the floor. Now, that's
Mhm.
kind of an overstatement, but it gives you the idea that it needs to be serious.
Yes.
And I think in COVID, because everything is ratcheted up, tension levels are ratcheted up, it must be serious. There must be something like irreparable harm or
Right. If your ex is taking the children to his house and his girlfriend is also there,
Mhm.
that's not a reason to spend money on an ex parte motion.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
pure sort of exposure to third parties that you're not sure whether they're following um, sanitary measures and CDC guidelines. That's not enough.
No. Okay, great. Thanks. Mom number two says, will a modified parenting visitation schedule negotiated during the COVID-19 crisis become permanent or affect permanent custody orders in place prior to the crisis?
Okay, so if you negotiate a new agreement with your ex during this crisis, I would not worry about it becoming permanent after the crisis is over. I would say that you want to be cautious about the language that you put in the agreement if it's a written agreement, right? Because
Right.
sometimes those things can come back to bite you. And that might be a good document. I mean, I would recommend that you have that document looked at by a good competent attorney before you sign it and file it. If you're going to make it a court order, if you're going to submit it to the court eventually for filing. Um, but I think that the fact that you're cooperating with your ex is a really good thing, right? That's a thing to be encouraged. And I don't think that a judge would hold that against you down the line and say, okay, well, you agreed to give him more time because you are an emergency room nurse or something like that. Okay, therefore that's the new normal for you. I just don't see it happening.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you. Um, let's see. If the other parent refuses to exercise visitation during the crisis, can I make him? I remember this particular mother. She was 24 hours. She had a job that was essential, so she was working
Yeah.
from home, having to homeschool the children,
Mhm.
doing everything 24/7, and the father was refusing to take any responsibility.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I think a lot of us as parents are finding homeschooling our children was probably not a career that we had a calling for. But unfortunately, you can't force the other parent to spend time with your child or your children. You couldn't then, you can't now.
And a judge won't.
And a judge won't, right? I mean, our courts look at it like having children is a privilege, and if you don't want to enjoy their company, we're not going to force you upon them, because it probably wouldn't be good for them. I mean, to force a parent to be active in their child's life when they're resistant to that concept
Well,
is
it's not going to
probably,
motivate good parenting.
yeah, you're probably going to see that parent acting out like a child, right?
Mhm.
And that's not good for the child.
No, it's not.
I mean, that's a really unfortunate situation for this woman who is, homeschooling, she's working, she's got the kids 24/7, and she would like a break. And I really feel for her. It's just, there's not a lot that can be done in this circumstance.
No, hopefully outside support,
Yeah,
and allow yourself to be vulnerable and ask for help.
right. I think that's a great point, Kathy. Ask for help, because, you know, it's hard when you're a single parent doing everything on your own.
It is very
And
hard.
yeah, and maybe there is a close family friend or relative that is, not medically vulnerable, and who you can trust, that has, been safe, and um, that you can trust your children with, to give you a little care, a little relief from them for a little while. Certainly. And, this is for parents everywhere, really. They're having to come up with some creative activities for their children, and new ways to really entertain them and keep them busy at this time. And I know that's challenging.
And I think a lot of children are doing a lot more screen time than they would normally be allowed. And
I
in
would
this
say so.
situation, that's okay. If you have
Yeah,
to park your children in front of the TV to get your work done,
right.
that's quite okay.
Right. It's
Okay,
not going to be the end of the world, and it's not a forever situation.
no, let's move on. Okay, this mom writes, where there are no court orders or agreements in place, and the ex is electing not to have visits during the crisis, will he get makeup time after the crisis ends?
So I would say the answer to that is pretty easy: no. In a situation where you don't have any formal orders in place, you don't have a written agreement about what kind of parenting schedule you're exercising, what his visitation is with the kids, and now he doesn't want to spend time with the kids because of COVID-related concerns. I don't think I don't think that parent's going to get makeup time at the end of the day. I
There's
just don't
not going to
see.
be any makeup time unless he can prove that he tried to spend time with the parents and he was not able to.
Right, right.
You can't sit around and watch everybody eat an ice cream cone and then refuse it, and then an hour later say, "Oh, I want my ice cream cone."
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I've even seen one of our attorney organizations had sent a letter to the Chief Justice of our California Supreme Court, sort of saying, we need guidance from the courts on what our clients should be doing during these times, and here are some recommendations from the bar. And the bar's recommendation was that if parents are foregoing parenting time or visitation during COVID, that we shouldn't have to be worrying about this makeup parenting time
well, we
after.
have enough to be stressed about anyway.
Yeah,
And I think the thing to keep in mind right now is to deal with today. You
yes,
don't focus on what might happen down the road because you
right,
don't have any control over it.
right.
Okay, let's see. This mom says, how can I protect my children where the other parent who works in a high exposure, high risk job insists on following pre-crisis visitation schedule, even if taking precautions?
Okay, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to break it up a little bit. So yeah, if your ex is working in a high risk or high exposure job, law enforcement, emergency room or hospital, or really, there are any number of high risk jobs. I think that in itself could be a good reason, a good cause to go into court and ex parte and say, hey, we need to stop visitation for the time being. I don't think you'd have a judge scolding you. I think you'd have a judge's sympathy if the other parent is in a high risk job and essentially your children are then being exposed, and are at risk of then exposing, you and anybody that you have contact and anybody that they have contact with. So I think even if a parent in a high risk profession or high risk, high risk profession, even if they're taking precautions, I think this may not be enough. It just
Well,
may not be enough.
I don't, there was the Dr. Green in Miami who lost custody temporarily of her daughter because
Yeah,
she was an emergency room physician.
yeah,
And I understand that judge's thought process. I mean,
right,
it's horrible to be working that job and
yeah,
not be able to come home to your child.
yes,
But if you're in a high risk position like that, and they are talking about how many people are asymptomatic,
right,
so just because mom feels good at the end of her workday doesn't mean that mom is safe for her child
right.
or dad. So I kind of follow that logic, and I know that a lot of people don't.
Right. I think that's a very tough call to make.
Yes.
And, if you find yourself in that situation where you're not getting to see your children because you're in a high risk job, I would say what you want to be making sure of is that you're negotiating to get some FaceTime with the kids on your iPhone or like Zoom, like we're using right now, or Skype, any of those apps where you can have video interaction with your children are critical right now to maintain that relationship.
Yeah, it is. And there are many, many, many high risk people
Yes.
who are not even going home after work, who haven't seen their children in a month.
Yeah.
So, it's just a matter of protecting your child. It's like
Right.
all these other moms who are concerned about their child.
Right.
If you're in a high risk profession, you've got to be concerned about what that means for your child, in my opinion.
Yeah, I know, I agree with you. It's a very, very hard situation, but ultimately, yeah, the safety of your child should be your primary concern.
Hmm. Right.
Keeping them safe and healthy.
Okay, then this is the last question. This mom asks, what if the other parent lives far away and the order says he gets visitation in the summer or for vacations? Do I have to let my children travel to another state or country at this time?
Well, that's an interesting question, right? Right now, at least the courts that I've seen in the Sacramento area, um, initially when we started getting, before the court shut down, I should say, I saw one of our local judges tell the parent who lived out of state, I'm not sending the children to see you for spring break, because regardless how they get there, in that case, they were driving, and I think it was to a state, from California to maybe Utah or Idaho. And, she said, they're going to have to you're going to stop at rest stops. You're going to have to stop for meals. You're going to have to stop to go to the bathroom. Those kids are going to get exposed at every step along that journey. And that's not fair to them. So I think that travel like that, where, it's not just a drive across town,
Right.
but is it, a long car drive or airline travel or bus? I don't think that the courts are supporting it. And I mean, whether you should go into court before you tell the other parent you're not going to allow that is a different question. But I don't think that you'd have trouble finding support from the court that you're not wanting to send the children on that trip at this time.
But do you think in a situation like that, should someone protect themselves by going into court?
I think that's probably a wise decision. I mean, I would say that as many lawyers, I would say the answer depends, right? That's a classic lawyer answer. The answer kind of depends on who the other parent is in this case.
And how well they get along.
And how well they get along, yeah. If you're gonna end up with the police knocking on your door, hey, the other parent is out here ready to pick up the kids and get them on a plane, then I'd say, if that's the parent you're dealing with, I would go into court proactively ahead of time and ask for an order, a protective order.
Right.
If you can cooperate with that other parent and get along and work something out, though, that would be, ideal. That would be the optimal thing to do.
Well, I always believe in protecting, myself. Of course, my ex was the type that you had to protect yourself from. But no, I wouldn't put my child on an airplane. I wouldn't drive my child to another state. I would be in court.
Yeah.
So, well, listen, I really appreciate you going over these questions and answering them. It's been an invaluable conversation.
Well, thank you.
I'm sure our mothers and moms and even dads who watch this have learned a lot and can maybe relax some. That's one less thing they have to stress about now.
I hope so. I hope it takes a little concern off of their minds, and if it helps even one person, it was valuable time. So thank you for letting me talk to you about these questions.
Thank you for talking to us.
You're welcome.
Okay, everybody, that's it for us. Now, if you want to find out more about Stephanie, especially if you live in the Sacramento area, remember, divorceoptions.net. Okay, good night. Thanks for coming by. Bye-bye.